Welcome to Body Signals, a Signos podcast. I'm your host, Bill Tancer, Chief Data Scientist at Signos. This is Season 3, Episode 3, an inspirational interview from Down Under with James Newbury, one of the fittest athletes on the planet. Today I'm joined by my co-host, Estelle Lampela, as we interview James Newbury, the 5th fittest athlete on the planet and 4-time fittest man in Australia, Ironman competitor, and vegan athlete. On today's show, James will share his story of how he transitioned from playing semi-professional rugby to competing in the world's CrossFit Games. He'll tell his inspirational story of how he was able to recover from a serious mountain bike accident to run his first Ironman 5 weeks later. He'll also provide us a glimpse into his daily diet as a vegan athlete and provide some tips for those just starting their fitness journey. You don't want to miss today's episode. Now on to today's show. Welcome back to Body Signals. We are thrilled to have James Newbury here with us today. Before I introduce James, though, we also have Estelle Lampela as our co-host. So, Estelle, say hello to the folks.
Hi, everyone. Nice to be on the podcast again.
Excellent. So, if you're not familiar with James Newbury, James in 2019 was the 5th best CrossFitter in the world. He's an Ironman finisher, plant-based athlete, former semi-professional rugby player for Queensland and Sydney Rugby League, and the current owner of Soul. And beyond all of that, he's also the nicest guy you'd ever want to meet. So, again, James, welcome to the show.
Guys, thanks so much for having me. I've been so excited to get on here and talk to you guys.
Yeah, and we're so excited to have you. I just want to get a little background from you. And my first question is, how did you get involved in CrossFit?
Yeah, so I was actually playing rugby league in Sydney at the time. I'd flown down there to start preseason, and a friend of mine said I should give CrossFit a try just to help with preseason training, a bit of extra strength and conditioning work. And I basically went along to a workout, fell absolutely in love with it, and then I've been doing it literally almost every day ever since. There have been a couple of times where I've taken a bit of a holiday and not done any CrossFit, but it's been about 11, 12 years now. But mainly I started it like most people to improve their other sport, and for me, then it ended up becoming, within 12 months, it ended up becoming the thing that I focused on the most and thing that I enjoyed doing the most, which was going to the CrossFit gym. So kind of woke up one day at the end of the football season and said, you know what, I think I just want to do CrossFit full time instead. And yeah, just like that, changed on a dime, and started training CrossFit pretty much full time, and opened a gym and started coaching. And then, just kind of moved my way through the ranks from there.
That's awesome. So CrossFit, I stumbled upon CrossFit just, I guess, channel surfing about 4 or 5 years ago, and saw the World CrossFit Games, and was just absolutely sucked in to just how grueling an event it is. So maybe you just run through for the audience some of the things you had to do to win one of your titles. Let's take the 5th best CrossFitter in the world during that specific competition in 2019.
So in 2019, that year was a super cool year. Obviously my best CrossFit year I've ever had. Basically, the CrossFit Games were structured a little differently that year. We had, instead of typically 40 athletes, we had 140 male athletes and 137 female athletes. So they tried to get a representative from every country. So they did a pretty good job in getting, 140 for the males and 137 for the females. And basically each event you did was a cut. So each event you did, until we whittled it all the way down to 10 athletes, was you got cut. So I remember after event number one, so event one was 4 rounds of a 400-meter run. So it was actually 450 meters. You came around, and then it was 3 legless rope climbs, and then you had to do 8 squat snatches at 80 kilos. You had to repeat that and repeat that and repeat that for a total of 4 total rounds.
So legless rope climb, you are just climbing using your upper body strength. How high are you climbing in that part of the...
About 20 feet.
That specific...
About 20 feet.
20 feet. And you've got to do 4 rounds of that?
Yeah, so you got to repeat that on a rotation as fast as you can.
Okay.
That basically cut the field from 140 down to 80. So they cut 60 athletes at the end of that workout. So if you placed 61st or above, 81st or above, your competition was done. I placed 6th in that workout. So that was a good workout for me.
Wow.
It kind of I was really fit at the time. It was, and I'd been working on those types of things a lot. So, that was right up my alley. And then workout number 2, for instance, was we had an 800 meter row, and then you had 3 sets of 20 push press with some 24 kilo kettlebells into, I think it was a 30 or 100-foot handstand walk. So you had to walk on your hands for 100 feet. Yeah.
Wait, now hold on a sec. First of all, the 800 meter row, is that on a Concept 2 or are you on the water?
Yeah, Concept 2 row.
It's on Concept 2.
Yeah.
Okay. So 800 meter row, you could probably get through that pretty quickly.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
What do you know your split offhand of like your 2,000 meter split?
Yeah,
2,000 meters. I think I've done 2,000 meters in 6:45.
Wow. Okay, that's good. That's good.
Yeah.
But then doing a push press and then what was the last? Oh, the headstand walk.
Handstand walk. Yeah.
That saps your shoulder strength doing the push press.
Yeah. So it was.
Wow.
Yeah. So
it's
basically trying to get the bottom line for the games is trying to find the most adaptive athlete you can get. So looking at 2 ends of the spectrum in terms of athletic potential, looking at someone who can, let's just take some of the world records. Let's take Usain Bolt on the circle here. We've got Usain Bolt at the top who can run 100 meters in 9.5. And then you've got on this side here, you've got Kipchoge who can run a marathon in 2 hours. And then you've got down here, you've got Eddie Hall who can deadlift 500 kilos. And then over here, you've got someone who can, maybe a weightlifter, like an Olympic weightlifter, say the world record holder weightlifter who can clean and jerk, something dynamic like that, clean and jerk, 263 kilos. And then space around that circle there, space around like the world's best swimmer and the world's best gymnast and the world's best agility sprinter, and then chuck all these things in and around this circle. And we want to be right in the middle. We want to have the best attributes of all of those. And then if you're right in the center, then you're trying to broaden out your ability to be as close as possible to each one of those realms. That's kind of like what we're trying to do. So making sure we can swim at a very high standard, run at a high standard, sprint at a high standard. So running across all distances and time domains. And then also being able to lift that deadlift as a 1 rep max as heavy as possible, which is competitive in the grand scheme of things. And then also, bring the weights down and be able to do it for, 80 to 100, 120 reps as well at a lighter weight that is still reasonably heavy. So it's really just trying to have the ability to cross boundaries into multiple disciplines that people are specializing in and trying to do fairly well at everything. And that's what the CrossFit Games tests.
Like super well-rounded, you don't want to, you want to be super strong, but fast, agile.
Yep.
Not just like one.
Yeah, so I actually had this idea of doing a test, and I think I've, put so much on my plate at the moment, but it's a test that I would like to do is like in one day, within a 10-hour period, I would like to sign up for an Ironman, which is, one of the most ultimate endurance tests you can possibly do. It's a 3.8 kilometer ocean swim. I'm not sure what that works out in kilometers. It's like maybe 2.5 mile. Yeah, 2.5 mile swim or something.
And 2.5.
And then it's a 180 kilometer bike ride, and then you do a marathon at the end. So it's the ultimate endurance test in terms of, aside from going and doing like the 300 kilometer treks and things like that. but in terms of like mainstream, the Ironman. But then I also wanted to try and get that done, and then also do at the start of it, pull a 300 kilo deadlift. So which I think is, it's over 600 pounds, pull a deadlift all within 10 hours. So not just having an athlete that can do one on the 1st of January 2022, and then he could go back and then do the Ironman in under 10 hours on January 2023, but someone who could do it in the same day, to show that you can have an athlete or a person, or like a human, physically be able to be capable of pulling something so heavy and showing such raw strength, and then also crossing to the far end of the spectrum and being able to complete an Ironman all in under 10 hours, which is a competitive Ironman time. It's not obviously the best in the world. It's a couple hours off, but it's both of those are competitive in each one of in their realms, and doing them on the same day in the same 10-hour period would be a cool test.
Yeah, so essentially you'd be doing an Ironman as a warm-up for your deadlift.
Yeah, or vice versa. Like. To be honest, I'd probably do the deadlift. I think I'd do the deadlift first, because Yeah, that's exactly right.
So James, I'm curious, when you made that transition from rugby to CrossFit, did you in your mind think that you could be in this elite category of being within the top 5 of all finishers in a world competition?
No, honestly, when I first started my CrossFit journey, I didn't even know it was a sport. I walked in the door, thought it was just a strength and conditioning program to help people, go, do karate or surf or play soccer or football. And it was just something that you just did. You went to a gym to either just be healthy and fit. And then there was nothing that was, tacked onto it. But then as, the weeks passed, I realized, people are competing in this. Like, you race each other in the gym. And I was like, this is cool. And it's like, yeah, you can actually race people all around the world doing this stuff. It's like you can go to competitions and you might have 4 or 5 events and it'll be as varied as possible. And you just figure out who's the fittest at the end of the thing. I was like, that's great. Like, that's so cool. And I'm such a competitive person when it comes to sport. I lapped that up, and that was just my trigger, and I was just into it from then on. But when I first started, I wasn't like I had strength and I had aerobic capacity coming from a football background. Like, I'd already been lifting weights and running a lot, but like I couldn't overhead squat. Like, holding that overhead squat position was very unnatural to me. Some things came very naturally, like the pull-ups came naturally. The jerk came naturally from the clean and jerk. I picked up cleans fairly quickly, but overhead squatting and snatching I wasn't great at. Never had been in that position before. So I had no idea. I think I placed in Australia in my first season. This was about a month after starting. I placed around 200 out of about 600 athletes in Australia. So I was like, how are there 200 people that are that much better? And so then I went back the next year with the aim to qualify for the Nationals, which was a top 60 placing. And I think we doubled or tripled the amount of participants the next year, but I qualified in 47 the next year. And basically from there, I've just been hooked. And at that competition, I ended up placing 9th. So in my second year, I ended up going from, the year before 200 to 9th within a season. And that was just because I was just so competitive with getting good. Like, I just wanted to get good and get good quickly. And I just spent pretty much every day just working all the things that I wasn't great at, which was snatches, overhead squats, wall balls, handstand push-ups, all those types of things.
Just out of curiosity, Is there a certain background that you've seen in CrossFit that people come from that succeed? Whether you came from rugby, but is it sport or people who were maybe more on the endurance side, the strength side? Is there any kind of pattern?
Yeah, so for a long time, it was actually a lot of ex-gymnasts and ex-Olympic weightlifters that would come into the sport. Especially ex-Olympic weightlifting was a huge one that, took precedence over and above everything else for such a long period, because I felt like the games were so overbearing, like so heavy bias towards strong weightlifters. And now I believe it's become more endurant along as we've gone on. So I think it's diversifying a little bit. There's been a lot of footballers that have come through, people that played lacrosse and hockey and football that have come through and done very, very well. But you still have the ex-Olympic weightlifter that comes through, or the ex-gymnast that comes through and then just adapt very, very well. Tia, who's an Australian girl who has won the games now 6 times in a row, she had a very diverse sporting background, much similar to myself. Growing up in Australia, we kind of just, chucked our hand up for as much as we could. We did cross-country, we played football. She ran track. I did athletics as a kid. She ran track. She did 400 hurdles was her sport. And then, you get involved in surf lifesaving like nippers, which is just basically almost like athletics or little athletics or track on the beach, where you do swimming and board paddling and all that type of stuff. And so she had a very well-rounded mix of like a skill set. And then she just adapted to the strength very, very, very well. So it's basically, I don't think you can be good at or be the best in the world at CrossFit if you get into it at 20 years old, have never done any training in your life, and then, you want to jump in and mix it with the best. I feel like you have to have been exposed to sport, since a young age, because CrossFit is so diverse in what it's asking you to do. You need to be able to build those. You need to be able to build those skills in, throwing and sprinting and changing direction and, having spatial awareness. All those things are built, 15 years prior to even starting the sport. And that's kind of where I think I picked it up quite well, because I developed skills that could transfer into CrossFit immediately after starting.
Such an incredible story. And I visited your website, and I hope that our audience does it as well. What's the URL for your website, James?
It's just James Newbury. James Newbury. It's jamesnewbury.co.
jamesnewbury.com.
Yep.
.co.co. On your website, you have this great video about your transition from doing CrossFit to the Ironman and a mountain bike accident that you had. This is such an inspirational story. I wonder if you just give us like a brief version of what happened. And first of all, how long was it between that accident when you actually competed in the Ironman?
5 weeks.
5 weeks.
5 weekends.
And this wasn't just like getting some bruises and scrapes from falling off the mountain bike. This was some pretty serious accident, right?
Yeah. So when I first did it, I didn't think it was going to be serious at all. But basically what happened was I was mountain biking. We were going to do a road ride. We were 5 weeks out from Bustleton Ironman. And this was an event that I just always wanted to just tick it was a bucket list thing. The CrossFit Games was finished. I'd placed 5th. A lot of pressure was off my shoulders, like personally, to like achieve a placing that I was very proud of at the CrossFit Games. So I kind of just, took my foot off the pedal in terms of like, chasing, a number 1 placing for CrossFit, and, just focus my thoughts on areas that I just, have always wanted to do that never could, devote time to. And doing an Ironman was one of them. So we were 5 weeks out. We opted to do a mountain bike ride instead of a road ride. And I was coming down the hill and I took a corner too quick and overshot it, and then basically went over the handlebars. And basically, as I went over the handlebars, I kind of speared a tree with my head at the base of the tree. And
oh my gosh.
just hit the tree very awkwardly. And basically like a protruding branch got me right in the middle of the back. And it basically broke T2, T3 spinal processes. I broke, I think, 3 or 4 ribs from memory, and then had a pneumothorax or punctured lung on the left-hand side, and a pretty heavy-duty concussion. So there was risk of it, my left lung fully collapsing. They were just very, they were monitoring that pretty closely. But as soon as they realized what had kind of happened, I was just sitting there in the waiting room, and they were just like, blah, get him into a neck brace and all this other stuff just to make sure that he's all good. And so I was in hospital for 5 days, and I was, asked the question, how long? I said, I've got an Ironman in five weekends time. What's the go there? And they're just like, oh, you won't be doing that. You're going to be out of action for at least 4 to 5 weeks, not doing anything. And I thought, oh, it's a long time to be sitting around doing nothing. So on day 6, when I got out of hospital, I was all cleared for spinal. So they were just like, yep, you don't have any, displaced discs or anything like that, or vertebrae that are going to be out of whack. I transitioned from going from the hospital to being at home, and I was cleared of all my spinal stuff. They said, you're good to go there. You're just going to have to take it easy. So I basically just jumped on the bike indoor trainer, and I just ticked my legs over for an hour on the 6th day, just very calmly, just hands in the TT position, nice and comfy, wasn't in any pain, and ticked over for an hour. And then the next day did 2 hours, the next day did 3 hours, the next day did 4 hours. And this is at a really slow pace, like talking pace, probably 40-30%, like very, very easy. I was just basically, if I couldn't train, I wanted to really focus on turbocharging recovery. So doing all the things that I'd normally do for training, but putting that into just a specific recovery program, and then cycling my legs until I felt ready that I could run and swim again. So making sure I was getting out and getting a little bit of sunlight every day, getting in the ocean every day, multiple times a day. I had a sauna at home, so I was infrared saunaing twice a day. Only short bursts and periods. I was putting red light therapy on my back. I was, eating like just the best food. I was sleeping more, as much as I possibly could. I was floating. I had a float tank at the house too, so I was floating almost every day, every other day probably, and just making sure my sleep was optimized. My room was dark. It was completely silent, and I was just like kind of just trying to ramp up or just notch up all the things that I would normally do to speed recovery. And I did this over the course of the next week, and I was back swimming on the back end of the second week after the accident. I was back running shortly after that because the jolting movement was quite painful on the back, especially around my shoulder blades. And then I went back and I got scans on my ribs and my T2, T3, and that was after, I think, day 15, day 16, and they're just like, whoa, like, what have you been doing? I'm just like, well, I haven't been sitting around doing nothing the entire time, which is what I was kind of like told to do, is like just sit on the couch or play video games, which is just not my style at all. Like, I don't even have a TV. And I was like, just movement. I was trying to get movement back. And in a way that wasn't, painful. Like, none of this was a painful, like, experiment. It was just really light movement, trying to get breathing back. At the time, I couldn't breathe fully in. I could only breathe in about 15-20% before something would restrict me in my chest. And then I remember I got to the point where every day I was gaining about 5% capacity to breathe in a little bit further. And then on I reckon it was day 10, I was at around about 50-60% capacity, and I went into the ocean and I dropped down underneath a wave that was coming in. And at that time, like, I couldn't twist around, couldn't turn. I had to like move my whole body to turn around because it was still very stiff. And I dropped myself under this wave, and the initial reaction when you go underwater, it's just natural habit, is to take a deep breath in. So I took this breath in, not realizing what was going on and knowing that I couldn't breathe in the whole way because it hurt. And as I took this breath in and ducked under the wave, I felt this big release in my chest. It was like almost like someone like popping my back or cracking my back or manipulating my spine. And I felt this big like thud. And I don't know what it was, but I was like, oh my God, what was that? And I was like, did something just explode? Did I just break another rib? Like, what was that? And when I was under the water, I just took like a couple of seconds to think to myself, let the wave go over the top, think to myself, what was that sound? And it was jolting to the whole body. And I came up and I thought to myself before I took my breath, I wonder if I can take a full deep breath again. And I immediately went from about, gaining 5% every day to gaining that last 50% in one go. And it was like I'd breathe fully in with no restriction in my chest at all, and no pain, no nothing. So yeah, it was just this really strange thing. And after that, I was basically biking, running, swimming, getting ready for this Ironman, all within the space of 2 weeks post-accident, properly.
Did you actually do it?
Yeah, I did it. Yeah, for sure. There's no way I could let everybody else have all the fun. I convinced about 12 people to jump in and do this Ironman with me, so there was no way that I could let them go and do it without me.
Wow.
So I ended up doing the Ironman, and I finished in 10 hours and 14 minutes.
Yeah, in the prep call, James and I were talking, and I think I'm on the opposite end of the spectrum. I'm actually one of the world's slowest athletes. So that's my claim to fame.
That's okay.
I used to do some competitive triathlons. I did Powerman in Birmingham, Alabama, cool. Which was a run, bike, run. And on the last run, there was actually a police car following me with its lights on because I was the last guy on the course. So guys crawling along at a few miles an hour. And then as I run to the finish line, I turn the corner, they're actually disassembling the finish line.
But you finished, Bill. Down. You finished. That's what's important. I love that.
I finished and they left the clock up for me just so I could see.
I love that. That's so good.
I think I did that in the time that James did his Ironman. So what an incredible story, James. I want to transition to another topic.
Sure.
Our audience is really, really interested in nutrition.
Great.
And I know you've been plant-based for the last few years.
Yep.
And you continue athletic endeavors and training and running your gym.
Yep.
Wonder if you could just give us some insight into what your nutritional philosophy is.
Yep. So I eat 100% plant-based. I don't eat any animal products, no meat, no dairy, no eggs, no fish. And that was a personal choice that I made after years and years of, being an animal lover, and then always turning my head away from, footage of, terrible footage that you'd see in particular farms and factories and our animal agriculture industry. I basically pulled up at a set of lights one day driving my car, looked across, and I saw a bunch of sheep all crammed into the back of this truck, and I instantly didn't want to look because it would make me upset. And I was just like, well, there's obviously a reason you're not looking at it. And I thought to myself, well, if I care that much about that I don't want to look at this thing, there's obviously something wrong here. And literally then on the spot, I went to the shop, I got some tofu, got some tempeh, and I never had animal products since. And that was back in 2019, around October 2019. About 2 weeks before my bike.
Wow.
About 2 weeks before my mountain bike accident, actually. And
wow.
And so for me, it was never about nutrition. It was never about, it wasn't particularly towards the environment, but it was mainly due to the fact that I didn't want to contribute to an industry that I felt was using animals as a commodity rather than a living thing that has feelings and could understand or could feel emotion and could suffer and could do all these things. And I just didn't enjoy how it was being how it was developing, and I just didn't want to contribute to the harm. So I just chose the option of not having any animal products.
So when you ran your Ironman, you were 100% plant-based at that point.
Yep.
Wow.
Yep.
Yeah. I actually married a vegan, so I tell people when they ask me if I'm vegan because of ethics or for health, I usually say for romantic reasons.
Yeah.
But then I think I agree with you. I mean, I would do the same thing. I'd always turn the channel if any of those ASPCA commercials came on. It was too much for me. So yeah, I completely understand. Now, one of the things I hear from people, especially people that are considering getting fit or compete in athletics, is I want to be plant-based, but there's no way I can get the protein I need. In a plant-based diet. So I wonder if you could address that for us.
Look, I think for me, the way that I see it is if they feel like they're not getting enough protein, it's looking at the reasons as why they feel like they're not going to get enough protein. And usually it's because they feel like they want to, add muscle or get stronger, or they don't want to, deprive themselves of, these nutrients that they don't feel like they're getting. But I also feel like there's a big misconception on how much protein we actually need day to day, and depending on your workload. And my workload in the past has been as high as it can possibly be. And, I was recommended to eat, 200 to 220 grams of protein per day. And I was, at my peak strength eating that type of protein. I've exceeded that eating 150 grams of protein a day for the last 3 years. To put it in perspective, I was eating about 150 to 170 grams of protein on average every day. And I did a powerlifting comp after 2 years of being vegan. And I did a personal best in the back squat. My best ever prior to that was like 200 kilos or 201 kilos. I did a 215 kilo back squat. My deadlift PR was 260 kilos. I equal PR'd my deadlift at 260 kilos. And my bench press, I'd never done a powerlifting standard bench press before, where you kind of do the bit of a pause and then press. And so prior to that, leading up to the competition, which I didn't really prepare for all that well, I think I did about 11 days of preparation, making sure I could hit all the standards. But I bench pressed 130 kilos with the powerlifting standard, and like probably the week before without the standard about 140 kilos. So all of my top end strength movements were never affected by decreasing my protein by 70 grams per day. And not only did it not affect my strength, it didn't affect my weight, it didn't affect how I felt, it didn't affect my sleep. All these things that you think eating less protein would subsequently do, it didn't do at all. And I'm not coming out of it saying I feel way better being plant-based or vegan. I feel the same. I feel exactly the same as I did the day that I stopped eating meat. I feel exactly the same as I did then as I do now. And some days, I almost guarantee some days I would be down around probably 120, 130 grams of protein as an 87 kilo or 190 pound, 185 to 190 pound athlete that likes to do endurance and then likes to lift weights and likes to do multiple facet training. Even bodybuilding to an extent, I enjoy doing those sessions as well. And I've seen a zero change in my body composition eating all that protein. So then I asked the question, okay, so what was happening to all the extra protein? What was happening to that extra 70 grams of protein that I was consuming and seeing no extra benefit in? Is my body just having to process this or having to deal with this as well? Like, what type of extra stress? Like, at a point, there's too much. So I feel like we got to the point where we were just jamming protein to the point where it was, just over and above what we needed to consume. So even decreasing mine down to 100, and I would say on average now, I'm training like once, maybe twice a day at the moment, and I'm having about 150 grams of protein, and I feel absolutely fine. I maintain my exact same body weight, and I feel just as strong as ever. So it just goes to show, I think it comes down to the quality of food, and if you have a varied plant-based diet, you'll get enough protein. I love my smoothies, so I do add protein powder to them, but I'm only having maybe one, maybe two of those per day, only because I just love my smoothies and I love to jam them up with lots of stuff. But you can do it without having any of that if you really want to. And the crux of this is eating good quality, whole food, varied, and you'll get your protein.
I'm going to put you on the spot, James, and let's just take a typical day for you. Could you walk us through what you have for breakfast, lunch, dinner, if you snack at all, what you have there too?
Yep, absolutely. So first thing in the morning, so I won't eat until roughly 10:30, 11 o'clock. So I spend the morning.
So are you doing time-restricted eating, or is that just the way you eat?
Yeah, I just kind of prefer to get up. I just prefer to get up. I have a coffee first thing in the morning. Well, I'll have some water first, then I'll have my coffee. And then I'll usually start eating like breakfast at around about 10:30, 11. And what I have in my breakfast is I have about 70 grams of oats with water, berries, peanut butter, some mixed activated nuts of a different assortment. It could be walnuts, pecans, cashews, like Brazil nuts, just a mix.
And when you say activated, are they like sprouted?
Yeah,
sprouted
they're soaked.
Okay.
Soaked. Yeah.
Soaked,
yeah.
Okay.
And then from there, I'll put in a scoop of protein. That's roughly 20 grams of protein. Mix it all up in a bowl, and that's what would be my breakfast. And then from there, I would have maybe a couple of hours, a few hours break. I'd probably train post this. I might go for a run to the pool. I can basically run to my pool and then swim and then run home. And then after that, I might make a smoothie. That smoothie would probably be about 500 mils or half a litre of coconut water. I would chuck in a handful of spinach. I would chuck in some frozen berries. I would chuck in a scoop of creatine. I do recommend creatine for active vegan athletes. Get a nice, good quality Pure creatine. Chuck in some creatine. I'd probably put in there some almond butter. I might, that might be a second dose of my protein for the day. I might pop it in that smoothie. But all in total, I'd say that smoothie would be around about 700 calories. Then from there, I might have an afternoon lunch, and that afternoon lunch would be, say, early arvo, and that could be like a tofu poke bowl. So it'd be like a rice dish with tofu. It could be like pickled ginger, maybe some seaweed, maybe some like nori sheets chopped up with some edamame, and you might want to add in some I don't know if you call it this in the States, but sprouted like spring onion or shallots. So yeah,
we call them shallots here, but yeah.
Shallots. Yeah. So chuck all that in a bowl, and then you've got I might have 2 squares of firm tofu, which is around 15 to 16 grams of protein. Then my rice and my other bits and pieces, and I try and add fermented food in wherever I can. So like things like pickled ginger, etc.
For like a probiotic.
Yep.
Effect.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
And then then a few hours later, I might have a snack, and that snack might be like a sourdough wrap with like a chia jam, and then I might roll. And I'm really strange for assorting these things, but I like to mix in like seaweed as much as I can to certain things. So I would have like 2 sourdough wraps with like either a chia jam or a peanut butter chia mix, and then put like nori sheets on there and roll it up and have them like that. And that'll be a snack before, say, like an afternoon training session. And then for dinner, I might have, for instance, like a black bean pasta dish with tempeh or lentils, or black bean, or like my black bean pasta with tempeh, or my black bean pasta with lentils mixed in, with just something really simple. I'm not huge for like making like a huge extravagant meal, but a black bean pasta or a tempeh dish or a big, fresh green leafy kale salad with blueberries and strawberries with tempeh tofu, or any other legumes you could find, and maybe mix in some nuts if you wanted to, some almonds or some cashews through the mix too. And that's basically me at the end of the day. That's kind of like what I would have. And then if I was, if I trained twice that day, and I was really under the pump, and I wanted to finish off the night with something a little bit more, and I'm trying to be as intuitive as I can with my eating. If I felt like I'd worked out really, really hard and I had like zapped myself and I needed extra fuel, I might finish off the night with an avocado mousse. So basically either a small avocado with a pinch of salt. You could add a banana if I wanted the carbs. If I didn't want the carbs, I'd leave it out. Pinch of salt, tablespoon of raw cacao, a little drizzle of oat milk or almond milk, and some maple syrup. And then if I wanted to bump the protein a little bit, I might chuck in half a scoop of protein and get an extra 12, 13 grams of protein there. And that's what I'd finish off the night with.
That actually sounds delicious.
Yeah, it does sound really good, and I guess it's fair to say you're not going hungry.
No,
during the day.
No. If I'm hungry, then I'll eat for sure. I'm not starving myself. But then I also can, and that's all done by about 8:00. So my eating windows, like roughly 9 hours, 10 hours maybe, and just depending on what it is, and what's on for the day. But that's basically an average day for me. That's what it kind of look like.
Are you seeing more athletes adopt the plant-based diet?
I think a lot more people are going towards, looking at how they can better manage their health, and adding in lots of colors and plant food is a really good way to just bump up and increase your longevity for sure. And I think people understand that. And for me, competing, getting a gold medal for me at the CrossFit Games, if it impacted my health to a point where I wasn't going to be able to surf when I was 60 years old, I wouldn't want to do it. Like I don't value the gold medal enough to give my health up for that. I'd rather live healthy and happy than sit with this dusty gold medal over in the corner of my room and be completely buckled by the time I'm 40 or 50 years old. So for me, it was always about longevity and health, and I think a lot more people are starting to realize it's not only good for longevity and your own personal health, but it'll be better for the environment. It'll be a lot less suffering for the animals in particular, and it's just, I think it's a really cool way to be less of a have less of an impact on our current environment, and also give yourself the best route to success, or the best way to live autonomously for as long as possible. And that's where it comes down to. I don't want to have to be weighted on hand and foot because I can't do my my everyday basic tasks because my body's just not keeping up anymore. But I really believe that a plant-based diet, and even if you don't go fully plant-based to the full extent, but even vegetarian, or making sure your plate has 90% of that plate is plant food, you're heading in the right direction for sure.
So James, in addition to competing, now you're, I guess, spending most of your time coaching?
Is
that fair to say?
No, actually, I'm not doing much coaching at all. I still have my gym in Adelaide. I'm living on the Gold Coast, but I'm spending a lot of my time at the moment actually working on building the absolute best quality plant-based protein. That's my goal at the moment. I'm building a plant-based protein.
Yeah, we talked about that. And you at some point, hopefully, I think you said by the beginning of 2023, we might be able to get that plant protein here in the US. Correct?
Yeah, that's the goal. We should be getting ready for launch in the next couple of weeks here in Australia. So the start of September, we're looking at launching. And yeah, the aim was we're really finding out in the last few years, we've found out so much stuff about our microbiome and how it plays such a role in everything that our body either metabolizes or has an effect on. And so I really wanted to basically we put out a big survey to a big group of people to ask them, what the biggest negatives they saw around, eating things like chickpeas and edamame and plant-based food and plant-based protein. And they said, bloating, things like that, taste, grittiness, all these things. So I was just like, is there a way that we can create a plant-based protein that is not only just a good protein hit, but also fantastically healing for the gut and something that would make the gut thrive and be at a great balance, rather than just feeding it more, good bacteria, just overloading it with good bacteria, more so making sure we can have a healthy, balanced microbiome so we can assimilate more of the plant food that we're taking on. So getting a good protein hit, being great for the gut, and it's being something that can serve a purpose for people that are living high-paced life. And I'm so flat chat all the time. Getting in and jumping in and grabbing a smoothie is so quick and easy for me. To chuck a scoop of protein in there, knowing that I'm getting good quality protein and getting a good amino acid profile, making sure it's going to be healthy for me, I can digest it well, I can assimilate it well, it's really bioavailable. That was something that I thought a lot of people could use. And it always comes down to, at the end of the day, I was like, well, I feel like this is something that I'm missing, and I would really like to create something that serves a purpose. And I feel like a lot of other people would see a lot of benefit in this too, which is why we've started creating.
Well, we're really excited to see that. Before we go, just wonder if you could, again, our audience is interested in fitness and weight loss, and a lot of them are just beginning their journey.
Yep.
Given the journey that you've had, which is absolutely amazing, I wonder if you can give our audience some of your top tips of how to start that journey.
Yep. So if you are a gym goer and you don't mind going to the gym, I just recommend visiting a local CrossFit gym. That is a very, very cool community and an environment to help keep you striving to achieve, new goals. It's a very motivating place to be. It makes you want to be there. It makes you want to be involved. It makes you want to work out. So if you're a gym goer, that's a really good place to be. If you're not so much of a gym goer, I can't stress enough the importance of play. Find some sports that you have enjoyed in the past and just play. Play as much as you possibly can. Play volleyball, play soccer, kick the footy, maybe rejoin a surf lifesaving club if that's what you did, if you live by the coast. But play sport, play as much as you can and get involved in maybe, your local Sunday 5K run. There'd be a local group around you that runs a 5K, no doubt. Jump in and walk the 5Ks if you have to, but just be involved in activity. And then honestly, the number one thing would be consistency. It doesn't matter if I set my goal today of, I've got all this work to do, I really need to run. I really haven't set a plan up for this week because I'm so focused on launching this cool new business. But I wanted to get a 40-minute run in today. If I get so drained for time and I can get out and run for 12 minutes, great. At least I'm consistent and I got a run done. And then it's so much easier to get the training done the next day than not doing it at all. So even if you get in a 10 to 15 minute run, but you'd planned a 40, that's cool. Just roll with it. Do the 15-minute run. Just get a little bit done that day. And then the next day, you'll feel so much more motivated to get some training done because you haven't missed a day completely. If you miss a day completely, then you're just like, oh, I'll start next Monday. And then you just put it off and put it off and put it off. Whereas just get a little bit done every day, and it doesn't have to be perfect. It's not always going to be perfect, but just do something every day and be consistent with that, no matter how small or big.
Excellent. So, James, how can our audience find you? Where's the best place to follow you?
Best place would be Instagram. My handle is just at James Newbury. That'd be the best place to go. Keep up to date with everything I'm doing there. And if anyone has any questions, I get back to all my messages on there. So feel free to send me a message if you have any questions.
You also have a great website. Like I said, I encourage everyone to go and watch that video about your preparation for the Ironman after that accident. And that's just jamesnewbury.co.co.
Yep, that's the one.
Correct?
Perfect.
And you also have some great ebooks there on nutrition, on fitness.
Yep. I have a bunch.
Excellent.
Have a bunch there. So you guys can check it out. I've put together some hybrid CrossFit, Ironman programs and cool stuff like that. And the recipe book there as well. It's got over 40 different plant-based recipes. So go check them out.
James, it's been such a pleasure having you. I'm going to go run and make a smoothie right now, actually.
Good. Me too.
After listening, followed by that avocado chocolate mousse that you described.
So good.
I want to try go plant-based for just a week. Just challenge myself to see that. Because just hearing you and all the different things that you're eating, I'm like, wow, it's not as difficult as people make it sound.
Honestly, it's really not. It's literally just retraining what we grew up eating, meat and veg. It was that was the dinner. It was a breast of chicken, it was potato, and then it was some carrots and some peas and whatever else was on the plate there, meat and 3 veg. And it's now just going, okay, it might be tempeh and some other things, or some tofu and some other things. And it's not hard, and you can make it taste really good. It just takes, just a couple of months of relearning how to structure and how to make it and to figure out what you like.
Awesome.
Well, James, thanks again.
My pleasure.
It's been such a pleasure having you.
Thanks a lot for having me, guys.
And we hope to have you on the show again.
Great. Thanks so much.
Thank you for joining us on another episode of Body Signals. We hope you enjoyed this show. Please take a minute to rate, review, and subscribe to Body Signals on your favorite podcast platform. We have a special offer for Body Signal listeners, a 20% discount on Signos. Just go to signos.com, pick out your plan, and get a CGM in the mail to connect your body in a whole new way. During checkout, you can use the code Body Signals, that's one word, no spaces, Body Signals, to get your discount. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next episode.